Welcome to Praise Hands, home of the Praise Hands, where we are all about creative, cross-cultural Christianity. I am your host, Robby Valderrama. This episode is brought to you by thechurchahead.com, resources and advice for forward-thinking Christian leaders, including coaching, contracting, and courses. Last week, we heard a panel discussion about social media, authenticity, and faith that was recorded live from the Create Conference in Atlanta with 3 members of the Black Christian Influencers. Today's episode is the second panel discussion, and our topic is music and mission outside Sunday morning. As I've thought about how we can unlock the beauty and power of creative cross-cultural Christianity, an important question surfaced. How are our Sunday morning church gatherings impacting the musical creativity of the church? Of course, not all Sunday morning expressions are the same, and there are bound to be different answers depending on the theology, personality, and cultural heritage of any given congregation. But the more worship leaders, musicians, and church leaders I talk to, one thing has become strikingly clear: that the musical creativity of the church is meant for more than just Sunday mornings. While honoring the role of more established formats of worship, Tiffany Hines, Deas, and Kelli Marie are each creating alternative spaces for expression and encounter outside of Sunday mornings, and they are impacting their respective communities in profound ways. They each have incredible hearts, and their stories will move you. Let's jump into today's show and hear what they have to say. I'm here today at the Create Conference in Atlanta. I've got 3 amazing guests here in front of me. We are at the Black Christian Influencers Breakout with Jackie the Educator, and there is so much creativity, there is so much passion, so much drive, and so much energy in this room. It's just an honor to be here. So I'm gonna start by asking each of you a specific question, and then I'll ask a few questions that you're all welcome to take a stab at. So Tiffany, let's start with you. You are a singer-songwriter, a worship leader, a gatherer of people. What do you want the world to know about Tiffany Hines?
I love music and I love people, and I think I've spent I feel like as long as I can remember, just strategizing with God of how to do those better. And so it's my driving factor of anything creatively. It's the end goal is to connect people with God no matter what it is. So
yeah, that's well put. Caleb, it's great to see you. You are the founder and CEO of Kingdom Writers, which is an innovative brand at the intersection of creativity, intellect, and worship right here in the ATL. What impact do you see this communal expression of faith having on the people involved, and how do you hope the culture of Atlanta will change as a result?
Cool. Well, Kingdom Writers has so many facets to it, but one thing we try to push with everybody is it's okay to dream. It's okay to dream, and then not only dream, but actually make your moves to make that happen. So we say, everyone's a creative, and also it's just a matter of, deciding, am I gonna have the right perspective to say, hey, this is mine, I'm doing it, and I'm gonna do it for God. And so in Atlanta, I feel like there's a ton of creatives, and so that's why, it's great to be here and doing that, but there's also these undercover creatives, so that's how it's gonna shift, that's gonna change. Like, there's so many people that are, they do stuff in private. I've been that person for many years. There's still stuff I haven't made the move yet to, share with everybody yet. But that's something how Kingdom Writers actually changed me even, so. Whether it's writing, poetry, music, etc., Kingdom Writers has pushed me to show that with everybody. And so that's what's happening with Kingdom Writers and how we're making moves here in Atlanta.
That's amazing. Kelli, you've started a night of worship called Dare to Worship, which has popped up in Chicago, Dallas, and Houston. I'm sure you've got plans for more. Can you tell us a little bit about your story and what led you to start these nights?
Yeah, okay, so I'm gonna try to make this as short as possible because it's kind of lengthy. But Dare to Worship was really a dare that God presented to me first. I was married at one point and I was going through a divorce, and that was the hardest time of my life. I've grown up in church, so I get it. I know how to, y'all get it. But that was the first time that my faith was tested, and series of events happened, but try to speed up the story a little bit. There was one night I was driving home and it was raining. I saw a pole and I stopped in front of the pole, and I had a decision to make, and if I was gonna hit that pole or not. And I sat there And I decided not to hit the pole. But the thought of that scared me, that I was literally having that discussion with myself. And so I'm crying on the way home. I get home, I get in my garage, I pull my garage down, and I'm like lying on my steering wheel, and I'm crying there, and I'm like, Lord, you know, I don't even know how I got here. You know, I didn't understand the pain that I was feeling, the frustration that I had. And make a long story less long, someone invited me to a worship night, and I went up there for prayer. And I believe in prophetic words. However, I was so hurt in the church where I saw prophecy used to manipulate people. I was kind of shut off from prophetic words, right? So I'm sitting there, but the pastor, he's walking back and forth on the stage, and he's like, he had the band stop the music, or at least bring it down some. And he said, there's someone here by the name of Kelli. And there was about 600 people in the room, and if I can be transparent, nobody was Caucasian or anything. It was, you know, and Kelli is not the most, you know, whatever. Amen. And so I'm looking around, so I open one of my eyeballs, and I'm like, okay, there's no one here about Kelli. So I'm like, did he say my name or not? And so he said it again, and I dropped the lady's hands, and she's like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I think this guy just said my name. And so she waved him over, and he said, hey, listen, God gave me your name on Wednesday, and he told me that you were going to be here, and he told me to lay my hands on you. What he didn't know was Wednesday was the same night I came home. All of my ex-husband's stuff was gone out of my house. My stepdaughter's stuff was gone out of my house. I came home to an empty home, and I was lying on my living room floor crying because I felt like everything, God had forsaken me. And if I'm also transparent, I waited till marriage, you know, to have intercourse, and I'm like, Lord, I've done all this and this for you. So there was a sense of entitlement that I had, and I felt like I did not deserve what I was going through. And so that night he prayed for me. He didn't give me a word of restoration per se. I thought he was going to say, you know what, God's going to restore your marriage, God's going to do this, God's going to do that. So I'm like lifting my hands and waiting for him to say that. He didn't say that. The only thing he told me to do was be an open canvas and allow God to do what he was doing in my life, and God was going to raise me up as a pillar. And I had no idea what that meant. And so I'm driving home. I was excited, one, because God met me where I was. The fact that he said my name, yes. I'm like, okay, God, you're aware. That's all I needed to know, is that you're aware of the state that I'm in. And so I'm like, okay, God, what do you want me to do with this? And he told me to go back to the basics, and I did not know what that meant. But the basics was worship. And I think, you know, that was really my relationship with him, because I found my identity in my husband. I found my identity in being a mom, my financial stability, and these other places. So when all that was gone, I had no idea who I was. And so someone mentioned it earlier on the other panel, as far as spending time with your creator to know you. And that is really what it was. And so, to be honest, my first worship night was about me. Like, I just wanted a space where I could lay out before God. And it became an ongoing thing. And we've built it to where it's a nonprofit organization. So we use different artists. I mean, we've had Travis Green, we've had Todd Delaney, we've had Jonathan Reynolds, anybody you can possibly think of. New artists as well. We've been able to showcase. Tiffany has been a part of one of our events too, in Chicago. But we have a relationship with Boys and Girls Club as well. So I'll bring different artists in as well to kind of begin that mentoring with them creatively. So if they want to be songwriters, if they want to be producers, we'll bring in someone like Tiffany to say, like, spend time with them. Because a lot of times music is their outlet. And so turning that music relationship into, you know, steering it towards God as well, to cultivate relationships, their relationship with God, that's what we utilize as well. So
yeah, that's really good. So a common thread that I see in each of the three of you is that you've created a space outside of Sunday morning for creative expression and encounter. And in the last panel, we talked with Lawrence, and some of these creative ideas outside of Sunday morning it seems like they're becoming more popular. Do you think that gatherings like yours will eventually become a more dominant expression of church?
Absolutely. I think so. I think regardless of if you grow up in church, which is what I did, or if you didn't, there's just such a small percentage of people that come into the four walls of a church, and I get it. We want people to come inside of a building, but I just feel God so much and stop making church a building. And so those relationships, I just believe we'll just see more and more of people, when you don't see an outlet for yourself, when you don't see that you fit in this little segment, this little part of life that's about, well, I was going to say an hour and a half, but if you go to a black church, it's probably it's still a very short time, then you can't find a place. And so when people start getting free and realize I don't have to wait on a validation or wait for someone to tell me that I'm called to do whatever God told me to do, then they're going to go and create, and then they're going to see results, and they're going to see people come, and it's going to just be this life-giving thing, because we're not waiting on anymore for someone to recognize what God has said. I'm totally about honoring and leadership and stuff like that, but I just think a lot of us are just like waiting. And so, it's just impactful to see your friends who just they're not gonna come into a church, but they're gonna see your life, and they're gonna trust you, and they're gonna come to your house, and they're gonna eat, you don't mind if I have a glass of wine? I don't, those kind of things. And somebody else, they're like, I don't, well then don't, it's just this common thing that brings us together is just becoming beautiful to see. So I think when we don't organize ourselves by function or by expression, then we resort to things like class or race, because that's all really we have, and so I think creating these spaces where people have an opportunity to unite for something bigger is huge.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, Caleb or Kelli, you guys have anything to add on that?
There's nothing to be said after that. It was all truth. But, honestly, there's revival happening and there's transformation happening. So it's not just revival as in we're coming all back inside that four walls. 'Cause like you said, there's people that aren't coming, point blank. There's people that have been in the church that are like done with the church, as in like the building and the organizational structure. And there's people that have, they've seen the church, they've never been in it, but like they've seen it from social media or television, my God. It doesn't look good sometimes. There's people just like, okay, I don't want to be part of that. But they see you, they know you, and they see your light, and they see what you're doing outside. So it's not just what you're doing on Sunday morning, but what you're doing day to day, wherever, anywhere, everywhere. It's like, this is who you are. So people see that, so that like draws people more so than just come to me Sunday morning to this church building. So I really think that it's really about building communities and just showing people that the love of God exists more so in the people besides like rather than the church building itself. So I do think it'll be a more common thing. I think. I don't think it'll be like absolute, in every case it's going to be like no more church buildings or kind of thing. Yeah. But I do think that it's going to be a standard.
Yeah.
I think this generation is just about authenticity. So at the end of the day, like just with me working with some of the kids with Boys and Girls Club, they're teenagers. It started with me just embracing them and loving them as they are. Some of our events are held at a church. However, some of them had never heard of some of these, artists or whatever. They were just introduced to them, but I had to go to them first, And so just even with me living out who I am and just being authentic with them and loving them, now they're calling me like, I'm going through this. It's opened up the door for us to have different conversations. We had an event in Houston, and our Dallas kids, they were trying to find a way to get to there, get to that event. And I thought that was really cool when that wouldn't have happened had we not started that relationship and went to them first. There was no way that they were going to go to, why would they just want to go to a church, church service? And then they were very kind of like old school, naive thinking, even though they're teenagers. They're like, do we have to wear tights? Do we have to wear stockings, to go to church? I'm like, no, come as you are. Like, we're free. Like, we're very unorthodox in a sense. We're who we are. And so that's what they're looking for. I've been able to share my struggles with them, and that lets them know that Christianity is just not about perfection. And just being honest with them. And so, I think we're more impactful when we're outside of the church walls.
Yeah, so there's a missiologist, which is a fancy term for someone that talks about Christian missions, named Alan Hirsch, and he talks about a concept called the missional incarnational impulse. And it's basically this impulse to not be congealing or coming together necessarily, but to really be going out and really to be looking to see who can we love, who can we touch. And that is one of the observations he makes about some of the ways we do church is it tends to be much more attraction-based, and that's our primary form of evangelism, is trying to attract people to ourselves. Whereas really, Jesus, his model was really go to the people. And so I think there's a place for all sorts of different church models, more traditional ones and more innovative ones. And like you said, Tiffany, honor is really important as we move forward. So shifting gears a little bit, looking at the current way that we do church and looking at the music of the church. When we create spaces for this type of creativity, how do we balance honoring the rich legacy of the music of the Black church here in America, while also creating an environment where people from any background feel included?
Okay. Okay, so I may be cheating a little bit, but this is really how I feel. I think if we're sensitive to the Holy Spirit, that's going to happen. Like, you have to be sensitive to the house, right? So my church, per se, we don't necessarily do a lot of quote-unquote gospel music, but sometimes there's times where it's warranted. And so if my worship leader was not sensitive to certain things, like he'll pull a hymn out of the air, and I'm like, where did that come from? But it was warranted for that time. Yeah. So I feel like, if you do have to, submit yourself to headship, but because my pastors have pretty much stated what their preference is, per se. Sure. However, my worship pastor has never been out of order, because you can tell when it was needed. You can tell by the response. That's what's happened in our worship nights. So I think it really is just going to come down to being sensitive to atmosphere, being sensitive to the Holy Spirit, because he's always going to keep it in order, regardless. So that's my fast answer.
Wow, so there's definitely a strong, beautiful legacy when it comes to America and Black people, period, in music, but especially in the church culture. I think that we have to consider not just being open to everybody, but actually I think everybody needs to consider more so what the heart of it is, instead of the music, more so what you're doing with the music, you know what I'm saying? You can try to, make however you want to set up your church or whatever, make you try to appease a certain group in any kind of way or whatever, but it's kind of pointless at the end of the day, because somebody's not going to be happy. But I really think you need to just be open-minded and take creativity with whatever you're doing to point to God. So in the music, we have a strong historic tradition, but there's also beautiful things that are happening now. Just not just the Black community or Black church or whatever, but in general. What's on my mind right now is hip-hop. Hip-hop in general, even outside of the church, is change people across the globe. That is the pop music right now. Nothing is more transformational right now than hip-hop. Basically, I feel like it's just a matter of saying, hey, this is God, and this is what we're doing for God. And as long as it testifies to the goodness of the Lord, it really doesn't really make a difference.
Awesome.
I think it's hard because with gospel music, I think it's this hard expectation that comes with it because of the cultural roots of where it's been for Black people. And so you have the tension of, you better make sure, you're talking about freedom, those things there. And at the same time, it's inevitable for music to evolve. And so it's hard when someone's trying to evolve and there's no space for it. And I think a lot of artists that are gospel artists now are trying to do that, as well as be true to themselves and be relevant with what just progressively happens. And it's not even just gospel music, it's all music. I think a lot of cultures, if they look back, they just are like, man, the way Bethel just does music now, it's just too much for me. I just miss the way it used to be, those kind of things. But it's just an inevitable thing that happens with music. And I think that awareness and that appreciation, but also that openness. I'm not a gospel artist, but I do have friends that are, and I feel the tension of it's not always as inclusive we don't say that, but we're not as inclusive as we want to portray. And so, if you need to sing this strong and this hard if you're black, or those kind of things. And it's really hard. And so if someone isn't that and wants to be a gospel singer, it's not enough. If they are, then it's just this balance of like people just aren't getting to be who they are because of their culture and because of their background. And so I think from what Kelli stated, like we have to follow the Holy Spirit and let him guide us in our culture. He knows the perfect way. Perfect ways, because he's so vast, to show us how to honor what we've overcome and what we've been through, but to also bring new songs and bring new presence to culture without it dying. So
what I'm kind of hearing from everybody is acknowledging really the open nature of culture in general, and that includes music as a subset, where it's saying, hey, like, innovation is going to make things look a little bit different, and we need to be spirit-led in that. We need to be intentional about it, and maybe have some fun too. So thank you guys so much for sharing. It's been an honor to hear from all of you. We'll post information in the show notes of how people can get a hold of each of you and the different initiatives that you have going on. Really appreciate your hearts for ministry and just the innovation, just like the groundbreaking stuff you guys are doing. Thank you guys so much for being on the podcast and for being on this panel.
Thank you.
Hey, Praise Hands, I hope you loved these guys as much as I did. Seeing unity in the church across racial lines is a life dream of mine, so it's been really special to have some of these conversations with my African American brothers and sisters. Only God knows what kind of collaboration might come from these new friendships. If you're fired up and want to do something to help unleash the musical creativity of the church, I have 3 ideas for you. First, start with you. Wherever you are, if you have a form of artistic expression, maybe now is the time to share it with the world. I know what you're thinking. What if people don't like it? Well, they may not. But what if they do? Don't let your fear get in the way of someone else's breakthrough. Second, connect with other creatives in your city. People are so lonely these days, and giving your neighbors, coworkers, or friends an excuse for human interaction may be the most Christ-like thing you can do. A third way you can help the musical creativity of the church is this: find a creative that you believe in and become a financial supporter of their music. It could literally be $5 a month, but those dollars and the relationship behind them may be just the courage and support someone needs to believe that their art matters. And on that note, you can visit praisehands.com/donate to give a one-time or monthly donation towards creative cross-cultural music. I'll go into more details at some point, but there are some incredible opportunities happening in Nashville that have the potential to change the sound of the church, and your funds would go a long way. Well, Praise Hands, thanks for your support. As a creative myself, your emails and messages on social media have been so encouraging, and I'm honored that you'd join me on this crazy journey. Till next time, I'm your host, Robby Valderrama. See you next week.